This video is a follow-up to one I did last week where I showed how in AdapTable, our Aggregated extension, you can create a calculated column and then use that in a pivoting layout as an aggregation column. And we had two questions. The first was in two parts, and that is, as well as using calculated columns for aggregations, is it possible to use them when pivoting to do two other things? That is, as a row group and also as an actual pivoted column itself, i.e. a column where you create a dynamic column for each distinct value. We'll show you what that is, but the answer is yes, you can. And then the second question was also interesting, and that is what happens when you use the server-side row model. AdapTable fully supports Aggregated server-side row model, but what happens then with calculated columns and pivoting? So we'll look at that as well. So let's first create our calculated columns. And the first thing we'll do is we'll create the first one the same as last week. So this will be total, and this calculated column is going to be very simply GitHub stars plus GitHub watches. Okay, and that's going to be a number. We'll make it pivotable. We definitely need to make it aggregatable. We'll make it filterable. So there's our first column. And let's now add it to the grid. So there's total, and then let's put total next to those two, and we can see it here. Now we'll add two more calculated columns, and these will both use our ternary operator. So the first, let's call it popularity, and this time what we'll say is if GitHub watches is greater than 500, let's return the word popular. Otherwise, let's return unpopular, and that obviously is a boolean, and that this one we're going to also make groupable, aggregatable, pivotable, and filterable. Probably won't need all of those, but there's our second one. And now we'll create one more as well, and let's call this favorites. And this time let's use an in expression. So we will say if name is in, and I will say if it's going to be in React, Angular, Vue. Let's add one more, add an stencil. Then we will call those our main ones. Otherwise, let's say they're the other frameworks. So again, AdapTable. Who thinks it's oh no, it is a string, isn't it? And let's again make that filterable, resizable, pivotable, aggregatable, and groupable. So there are two columns. Let's just quickly add. Let's quickly add them to the grid. So popularity, and let's put that here, and favorites. Let's put that here, and we can see so some are popular, some are unpopular. These and this one are our main, as per the logic. Okay, so now we're going to create a pivot layout. So we're going to create we're not going to edit the layout. I don't know why I did that. We're going to create a new layout, and we're going to make it a pivot layout, and we will call it, because I'm not being very creative, pivot layout. And the first thing you can do is you can say which pivot columns do you want. So in our case, we want to pivot on popularity. So you can see it's added here, as is total and as is favorites, because we made them all pivotable. And now we decide what we're going to group on. And here we will group on favorites, because again, we made it groupable. And lastly, we can decide which aggregations we want, as we did last time. So we will do GitHub watches and GitHub stars, and we will add our third calculated column total. So if we go to the summary, we can see we've created a pivot layout, and we can see that we're row grouping on the column favorites, we're pivoting on the column popularity, and we've added our third calculated column total as an aggregation. And now when I finish, there is my pivoted layout, and we can see that we have created one column, or really one set of columns, for each of the two distinct values in popularity, which was popular and unpopular. And then Aggregate creates an aggregation for each of those. So it creates the sum of GitHub watchers, the sum of GitHub stars, and then the sum of total. Total is our calculated column, and obviously we can see that all adds up. And finally, we are grouping using favourites, so it's created one group for main and it's created one group for other. And you can see all that's here. Obviously you can do it through the UI, so I can take favourites out and then we just see the totals, and then in fact it's put it here, so let's stick it into row groups again, and you've got it here. And likewise, if I take popularity out, I just see the totals, but then I can add them. And again, AGGrid first adds them here, but I can then make them here. So there we are. We've created 3 calculated columns in AdapTable. We've created total, we've created popularity, and we've created favourites. And we've used total as an aggregation column, popularity as a pivot column, and favourites as a row group column. And now to answer the second question about the server-side row model, AdapTable does support the server-side row model, but as far as calculated columns are concerned, in fact you can see here, it says it depends on the complexity. If it's just a standard calculated column where the value in the column is based on other values in the row, then everything will work fine, because as the row comes in from the server, AdapTable will just immediately calculate or update its calculated column as required. However, we do of course have aggregated calculated columns. They're ones where the expression is based off a number of rows, where you can sort of say, tell me all, the total for all rows where x is equal to this and y is equal to that. That of course won't work in the server-side row model, because we don't have access to all the rows, because obviously they come in at different times. And in fact you can see that here. So in this example here, it's our big server-side row model. We actually have a calculated column called total medals, which is gold, silver and bronze, and we can see it here. That's 8 because it's 8, and this is 8 because it's 6 and 2. And then you can see as we get more rows in, the rows will come in from the server, and as they do, as they just are now, you can see the total is showing whatever's in that row. So you can use calculated columns when using the server-side row model, but if they're scalar, AdapTable will do all the work for you. If they're aggregated, then we will pass the AST and the definition on to you, and you will need to calculate it yourselves on the server. Hope that was interesting and answered your questions. As always, if you've got any questions, please get in touch. We'll be happy to give you a personalised one-to-one demo, or indeed provide you with a free, no obligation trial license so you can try out AdapTable with your own data. Thank you for watching.